Coming up next in This Week in Computer Hardware, Intel Developer Forum, Haswell Y, 14nm Broadwell, Quark for the Internet of Things, 12-core servers, HDMI 2.0, and Bay Trail, a.k.a. Z3000, an Atom CPU you'll actually want to use. It's all coming up next on Twitch.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust. This is Twitch.
Bandwidth for Twitch is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware, episode 234, recorded September 12th, 2013. Atom CPUs don't suck anymore.
This episode of This Week in Computer Hardware is brought to you by ProXpn. ProXpn is a virtual private network that allows you to use the internet the way it should be, anonymous and unfiltered. For 20% off your new account, go to proxpn.com/twit and use the code TWITCH.
Welcome to Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware, Twitch weekly show that aims to bring you the best, most useful, most informative, most important computer news. I was just dragging on for a while, isn't it? Ryan Shrout,
It's a lot of
you're here. I'm here.
Of pressure on the show. I just want you to know.
How about we just pick up the important stories from Intel Developer Forum this week? If you're not familiar, Intel Developer Forum is Intel's annual shot to tell everybody what they're bringing in the future and to give them an opportunity to design products that work with them. And in the past, we've learned how to develop system cases that efficiently remove heat away from the processor.
Yeah,
and
BTX was a new thing at one point.
And also 3D printing, by the way.
That was not at IDF.
This was not at IDF today. It is, however, on the Magic Desk of Doom, also known as the Sky Desk. There was a terrible thud. There was an earthquake, and Ryan and I weren't tied down. So,
yeah.
Okay, where should we start? Should we start with Quark? Should we start with Bay Trail? Should we start with Atom?
Let's start with Bay Trail, because that's actually the product that was released. So that is, it was actually a little bit different IDF this year, because normally what happens at IDF is they tell you about some new architecture, what's going to come out, say, at CES. And then you learn about it. Us as the media kind of digest the architecture, and then we wait for products to come out. With Bay Trail, it was a little bit different in that they briefed us through the course of August and July and August about what the Silvermont architecture was, what Bay Trail as a processor was, and then actually had stories ready to go at the start of IDF as reviews of the product, essentially. So Bay Trail is the successor to Clover Trail. Clover Trail was a CPU architecture. It was an Atom Z2760 was like the flagship part. And it was meant for tablets. Kind of, they said it was going to be in smartphones, but it was not very good in smartphones. They didn't have very many design wins at all. I don't think anything in the US, actually. But Clover Trail, was basically when Atom was originally released 5 or 6 years ago with the netbook craze. It had just kind of been slightly tweaked here and there every generation when it came out.
So essentially, you're talking about the original Atom processors, 2 of which I own and have been using a paperweight for at least 2 years now. Yeah. They were called netbooks, then tablets came. Essentially, a 20-year-old aging Pentium architecture has been wiped and replaced with a modern architecture. Multiple core?
Yep, up to quad core. So it's designed in modules. So you have 2 cores per module, and they sell a one module or a 2 module kit for you get quad core or dual core. They don't have, quad core or dual core. They don't have hyper-threading anymore. Okay. That's gone from this. But it is a completely from the ground up redesign. So it's actually an out of order architecture, which like the quick way of the benefits of an out of order is that when it gets a series of instructions, it can change the order of them to more efficiently move them through the system.
It's a good thing.
It takes more die space, and that's why they weren't doing it before. You had to really start over to design it.
Considerably more power efficient.
Considerably more power efficient. So they designed it to be in the same thermal envelopes as Clover Trail. So the same size tablets, the same size kind of netbookish. I hate using that term now, but like small notebooks will work with it. But performance-wise, you're talking 3 to 4x the performance.
That's a big jump.
That you had on Clover Trail, yeah.
In range of a Core i3, or still still far behind?
It's short of that, without a doubt. But I was going through when I was doing our testing on Monday in Santa Clara. I had this Lenovo tablet too that had a Clover Trail in it, and then we had the sample ones that were these Bay Trail, and it's like it's a truly night and day experience change. I mean, for what it is.
We were talking about this on Texilla the other day when you came by.
Yeah.
Was that we were both, or I was like, shouldn't they just cut off the Atom name and start a new brand? Because I don't know anybody that hears Atom and thinks, my goodness, it's one of Intel's fine, high-performing processors I want to use for my everyday computing tasks. That's not how anybody reacts to Atom anymore.
No, I don't know if they ever did, to be honest with you. So this is the Atom Z3000 series, though, so it's a higher number.
Okay.
Right? Isn't that enough?
I agree. It has
100%
more dead crab.
I 100% agree, though, that I think the Atom brand should have been left behind. But they decided they had put a lot of marketing and dollars behind that brand, and they wanted
consumer recognition of the Atom brand as being a premier choice for inexpensive, low-power devices is really something we want to continue to take advantage of here at Intel as we push the processor forward.
Pretty much. So the unit we tested was quad-core clock speeds up to 2.4 gigahertz with what they call burst technology. It's not turbo anymore; it's burst on these processors. And I think they call it burst because it spends much less time in those higher clock speeds, and that'll depend on the thermal solution that any particular vendor uses on that. Up to 4 gigs of memory, dual channel memory controller, and up to 2560 by 1600 resolution on those panels as well. And as you kind of go down the stack, things vary a little bit, but fairly high performance parts, a huge improvement. They're targeting Windows and Android for this, and they let us test both Windows and Android in our review at PCPer.com. It was a much better product under Windows, though. The driver stack for Android still needed some work. The graphics still needed some work. It's competitive with things in the Android world, but it doesn't blow it away.
Right.
In the Windows side, earlier in the year, I guess it was, we were talking with AMD, and we were pretty impressed with Tamash and Kabini as architectures, and this is. It kind of takes it out of the equation. It really does, which is unfortunate for AMD. They had this little window of time where if they had put out a bunch of stuff, they would have had the most power efficient, moderate performance part, and instead now, Clover Trail, Bay Trail devices are going to be shipping on October 18th.
So thumbs up for the Z3000.
Yeah, it's a good part. It really is. If you want to see more of the benchmarks and all that stuff, you can check out the review. We don't need to go through them one by one. But when an Intel 3 to 4 watt part performs about the same as an AMD 15 to 20 watt part,
that's hard.
That's tough. There's no real reason why an OEM would choose that other option. And that's a lot. That's a lot of battery life right there. That's a lot of thermal. Yep. You don't have to deal with. So it's exciting. Something we were talking about on the ride up here to Petaluma is we are starting to see $300, $350 notebooks are a thing. They're probably going to have 10-inch screens. They may gust as high as 12-inch screens. But something that's been interesting as these parts get incredibly efficient, as the cost is becoming incredibly low, is decreasing, cost less. It's funny, right? Because you have these ridiculously powerful parts sucking down basically no wattage, at like 22 nanometers, so they can fit a zillion chips on a single wafer. So the cost, if they're not having issues with the process, it means the cost on these parts is starting to drop through the floor. You're starting to get these really interesting $300 notebooks, and they're really interesting because if I can use a notebook without being and flinging it across the room, then probably most of the other people watching right now will actually find this to be a usable notebook, and it becomes an option for school, for a media controller, for something you use around the house if you don't want to spend $1,000 on a sophisticated high-end notebook. It's later down in the show notes, Burke, if you want to bring it up. But we should just talk about the one physical model that I spent some actual time with. The retail model is the Asus Transformer T100. It's a Bay Trail based transformer, so it's a tablet. It's that 10-inch tablet with a dockable keyboard. Right. It's 11 hours of battery life. It is $349 for the 32 gig version, and
so it's a usable tablet
for 64 gigs.
It's a usable notebook.
Feels great. It's really light. I think it's 1.2 or 1.3 pounds, and just the the easiest test you can do for a tablet, is how fast do things scroll, how fast do things move, and I pinch and zoom, does it work? And I literally, in the span of 2 minutes, went from a Bay Trail tablet to a Haswell tablet, and the Bay Trail tablet impressed me more. They had specific things that they architected for that in Bay Trail because they knew where it was going to go.
Now, you also mentioned that I believe the Bay Trail tablet was running Windows 8.1.
8.1.
Okay, so it also seems that there have been some optimizations made in Windows 8.1 that is going to make touch on a tablet be more functional and less frustrating. Which is, as somebody with a lot of touchscreen desktops in my life right now, a lot of touchscreen all-in-ones in my life, and it's become like, oh, yeah, hey, I can scroll through a web page. That's nice. But, you know, mostly I'm like, hey, I've got 8 gigabytes of RAM and SSD and a Core i7, and my fingers never have to leave the keyboard again. And then a couple months later, I remember again that I have a touchscreen. And so I'm hoping with Windows 8.1, I will actually want to use the touchscreen because it feels usable. Yeah, it's funny because I've seen a couple under NDA. This is probably the third one we've seen where it's like a really functional $300, $350 laptop design. I love the idea of this because this is cheap, this is inexpensive, and this is very usable if the 10-inch screen doesn't drive you insane.
Yeah, I mean, it's a small keyboard, it's a small screen.
Right.
But remember, when Windows RT came out, those were the low-cost Windows options. But Windows RT is not Windows. And every time I tried to use a Windows RT device for more than benchmarking and testing, I always ran into the issue of, oh, I have this application I want to, oh, wait, I can't. Can't run all the programs I want to run. This is, full Windows. Not
the problem with the Z3000 and the other sort of entry-level devices we're seeing.
Right.
Shifting gears, IDF 2013, Intel plans $100 tablets and 22-nanometer system-on-a-chip smartphones. None of which, the smartphones at least, you will probably see in the United States anytime soon. No. $100 tablets, that's kind of like the new entry price. Like, it's funny, if you go to Alibaba Express, you can find dozens of Android-based $50 to $100 tablets. As you go from a $50 to $100 to a $250 tablet, there's kind of two things you notice. One, the screens get a lot better on like a Nexus 7, and the processors probably got a lot more functional. Intel, of course, desperately wants to be. Well, we've talked about this. If you haven't picked up on it, we've been mentioning Intel wants to be a big part of the mobile thing with the phones and the tablets. Mostly the phones, but tablets would be nice too.
Yep.
It's interesting, right? So they were showing the Lenovo tablet. Did they get really specific about the new?
No. So they just said that tablets. Based on this processor, it'll probably be the dual-core version. It'll be lower speed. Will be for sale for under $100 by this Christmas.
And this is the Bay Trail processor.
Yep.
The Z3000 that does the Atom that does not suck.
Right.
I bet Intel's going to love that. Z3000, it's the Atom that doesn't suck. There's a box quote for you, people.
Yeah. But the idea of getting that for $100 is
awesome.
We're not talking about through a contract on a vendor. It's just $100 is really great. And I really think it'll be interesting to see how the Android tablet market versus the Windows tablet market spans out. Once you have Windows 8 in a tablet form, which is what it was designed for.
You don't say.
Right. So say you have Windows 8 in a tablet form at $100 and an Android in a tablet form for $100.
Right.
Which one do you choose? Like,
well, it depends.
You can run all kinds of stuff on Android, but you can run everything on Windows, except for those Android apps.
I don't know. Is there Angry Bird for Windows?
Right, but they'll have Android app emulators and stuff. So it's interesting to think about how that will change the tablet market, because the main reason people went with Android tablets is because they were low cost and easy to use. And
apparently Windows RT did not work.
Yeah, no.
To the tune of the mother of all write-offs recently for Microsoft. Intel shows off Haswell Y and 14-nanometer Broadwell chips in new devices. New Intel CEO Brian Krasnich took the stage at IGF 2013 to talk about Intel's future in the PC market. The CEO believes there is more innovation in the PC than ever before as the company introduces new Haswell and Broadwell chips. New form factors are being experimented with, and Intel moves from traditional CPU to system-on-a-chip type of architectures. What's the deal with the Haswell Y? Low power.
Yep, that's pretty much it.
Like this is another 4.5 watt part.
It's a 4.5 watt SDP, which is standard drawn power. I don't know what it stands for anymore, but it's like under normal use cases, not maximum thermal limits, but under your normal use cases, how much power is this going to pull?
Right.
And they have a specific software suite that they use to kind of judge that. And it's 4.5 watts. It should be dramatically higher performance than
Existing
Bay
4.5
Trail
watt
or whatever.
parts.
But it's going to be in bigger devices. It's not. You're going to be able to have fanless devices, which is really cool. The idea of a fanless one, but you'll probably have to have a little bit heavier heatsink than you would otherwise. So,
So basically,
still pushing down
faster than a Bay Trail, slower than a Core whatever. Or will it be the Core
It'll
whatever?
be a Core something.
Okay.
Part.
Core i3 Ultra Mobile, Core i3
Something like that.
Power Sipping, Core
Haswell Y
i3.
is not a great name for it.
No, it sounds like a comic book
Haswell
about.
because. And then the other thing they showed was the 14 nanometer Broadwell.
MOUS. Sorry.
It's just their next generation SoC. All they did was hold up a laptop that they said was powered by Broadwell, indicating that, hey, we're still working on other, process die strengths.
I was going to say,
bring better performance and lower power.
and that was more about being like, we're really close to going from 22 nanometer to 14 nanometer. And we're going to get a performance boost, and we're going to get a power consumption drop, and we're going to do it because we've got the best damn process technology in the planet.
They do. I had a conversation with somebody, kind of, it's off topic, we don't want to talk about it, but it was interesting that they talked
Process
about
is interesting.
ARM versus Intel. That's kind of like the battle that's setting up, even though ARM really doesn't sell processors, they license processors, is Intel has a pretty big process technology advantage today.
Right.
They can afford that because they have high margin parts. If they start to come down into these $100 tablets and cell phones where the margins are much lower,
Right.
will they financially be able to keep as strong of a process tech lead in, say, 10 years?
It depends on how strong the desktop and laptop.
Assuming the desktop and laptop markets continue to shrink and it's all going to ultra low power stuff. It was just a what do you think long term kind of discussion that I had with somebody about everybody in the ARM market, from the ARM design to the vendors that put it in there like Samsung and Qualcomm and Nvidia, to the people that actually make it at TSMC or Samsung or wherever.
Right.
They're all working. They're sharing those profits, right? And so the margins are much thinner in those areas. So we'll see what Intel does over the next decade of that.
Intel's got a funny
They're pretty
habit of
smart.
figuring out how to make money.
They do that. They do that.
Speaking of which, have you heard about the Internet of Things?
I have. I don't like the terminology, but it's an idea that's been around for a while.
So the idea is eventually you have a chip in everything, so the universe can track itself. With the glory that is the glory that is IPv6, we can have like 42 million IP addresses per square inch on the planet. Is that about right? 42 million per square inch?
Wow, that's a lot of IP addresses.
It's not quite that many, but it's more than. Basically, we'll have to start giving IP addresses to grains of sand effectively to run out of IP addresses with IPv6, but. Not exactly seeding the mobile market, but maybe trying to get a jump ahead on the next great rise of processors is the Quark systems on a chip.
So this is from Intel. It was kind of a surprise.
Right.
They announced a new family of SoCs called Quark. Get it,
Quark.
Atom, then a little bit smaller. You get to Quark.
And next comes like what?
I actually don't know the answer to that.
I did the other day, but I've forgotten it.
So basically, ARM. If we look at ARM versus Intel today in tablets, those are the high-end ARM processors,
Right.
and there's a whole other world of processors that you go into an embedded family where they're super low cost. For example, if you have a blinking watch, chances are there's a little tiny ARM part in there. Ironically, Intel gave out bracelets that had LED lights in them that they could control through broadcast, and somebody opened one up, and there was a tiny Atmel ARM-based processor in that. And so this is a market that Intel doesn't really have any strong presence in.
Right.
And even the Atom, the Bay Trail, the Silver Mont architecture, even it is not low enough power to get into some of these areas. Things like the smartwatches and whatever came out over the last 2 weeks. So Quark is kind of their answer to that. We're still a ways away from it, but them announcing it is that it is a fully synthesizable processor core, which means that you can merge it with other IP, and in theory, it could be produced outside of Intel's fabs.
Interesting.
I don't think they want to do that. I think they want to keep it inside. But the idea is somebody who wants to design a processor to go into all the smart watches takes that Quark core, and Intel allows direct connection to the fabric around it. Put in whatever memory controller you want, put in whatever kind of graphics you want, and you produce a super low power SoC.
I mean, basically, Intel wants to make this chip themselves, but if Samsung says, hey, we'll put it in the next watch, but only if you let us produce it on our fabs, Intel will go, cut us a check.
Right. They claim that this chip is 1/5 the size of Atom and 1/10 the power levels of Atom.
That's a big deal.
So, I mean, that's a significant reduction in die size and power consumption, and that's core to core, not SoC to SoC. But it's obviously meant to go after the ARM market that is those embedded products. And one of the benefits that ARM has is they're willing to license the core itself. So you don't have to take one of their off-the-shelf products. You can take the actual ISA and build the processor around it if you think you can do better at getting to lower power.
Right.
But ARM has a huge family of processors just sitting on the shelf that they can plop down, and they've had years and years and years of low power stuff.
Sure.
That now if you put it on a new process tech, it's going to be even lower power.
And we got to point out also that Intel has done some spectacular things in the last 5 years of kind of rediscovering low power or discovering low power or just getting their low power on. I mean, I think both of us, probably the biggest announcement either one of us have seen in the last couple of years was Haswell actually delivering 50% boosts in battery life. I'm still knocked back on my heels about that.
Yep. It's at the expense of top-end performance, but as a result, you get better battery life and better efficiencies.
I'm not gaming on an Ultrabook. I'm not gaming on
No, but I'm saying the architecture as a self. So even when you put that part in a desktop, you lose a little bit of the high end, is what happens.
Harsh and my mellow, man.
It's something we got to fight with.
Because Nook should not stand alone, Gigabyte has announced the new Haswell-powered Bricks PC. It just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? Bricks, B-R-I-X. I'm with you. They're like Legos without the little pointy things. Small form factor PCs to include Intel Haswell processors, 4K display support, and additional I/O port options. The new Bricks systems measure 29.9 millimeters times 107.6 millimeters times 114.4 millimeters and feature a chassis constructed of anthracite aluminum. That means black anodized aluminum with a glass top panel. The new Bricks PCs come or painted. They could be painted coal black. 4 SKUs, each of which comes with an Intel Haswell processor of i7, i5, i3, or Celeron varieties. It's nice. 802.11n, Bluetooth 4.0 radios. Pick your own mSATA SSD, DDR3 SO DIMMs. They'll support 16 gigabytes and load your operating system of choice. 2 USB 3.0 ports on the front and a headphone jack that doubles as an optical SPDIF output. It's nice to know somebody's buying those now that Apple's stopped. HDMI outputs, DisplayPort, Ethernet. This is just prime for being a little tiny server box like the Nook is prime for being a little tiny server box, at least to me.
You could definitely go, if you do that, I'd go to the cheap side because that's more than enough performance for it. At the higher end, they're looking at a home theater box that can play back video and HD video. They mentioned 4K. I actually saw at IDF a version of this it's taller. It's probably maybe twice the thickness that has Haswell, I don't know the model, but it has Iris Pro graphics in it. So it has the top end Intel integrated graphics. So even now you're talking about you could actually have a modest PC gaming experience on this machine. Hook it up to your TV. It's got all the connections for, DisplayPort and Ethernet and USB 3. You have a pretty good little machine, kind of a headless PC. It's essentially the same hardware you would get in a top-end laptop in a little box. I also showed one that was this Bricks with a projector built into the top of it.
That's a little gimmicky for me.
A little mini projector, yeah. I agree. It's an interesting idea. Like, you just take this with you.
Right.
Put it down. Now you don't have to bring a monitor. Like if you go to a LAN party, as long as it's dark and you're close to a wall.
I just wish one of the Intel Nooks had USB 3.0 ports. I need the bandwidth for the hard drives for the server.
So Intel also has new ones, new Nooks based on Haswell.
Okay.
I think one is showing up to my place on Monday, so I'll be able to tell you if it has all that. But I think they took Thunderbolt out, which is a little bit annoying. I want everything. All
with Thunderbolt. I think Thunderbolt's dying. I think you and I are the only people that are enthusiastic about Thunderbolt.
Wasn't a big draw at IDF, I guess. I mean, they had a lot of people demoing systems and performance, and Promise was there and talking about Thunderbolt 2, and
right.
Gigabyte had motherboards there that had Thunderbolt 2 on them. There was some interesting things.
Ivy Bridge EP is arriving on Xeon's E5 2600. Or did I get that backwards?
No, that's right. The E5 2600. So it's Xeon E5 V2, like version 2. Like that's
12
the naming
cores.
scheme they're using. Yeah.
22 nanometer TriGate technology. Kids, the future is here. There's a TriGate processor. Sorry, I get excited. TDP between 40 and 80 watts with the same 15 megabyte L3 cache as the SBEP. Or 25 megabytes of L3 cache, 6, 8, or 10 cores, and TDPs ranging from 70 to 130 watts using the existing interconnects. Man, 12 cores, 115 to 130 watts, and 3 rings linking the cores and cache segments with a split memory controller. That's some exciting stuff. Quote, companies with workloads that like to ride on lots of threads and cores are going to be able to get a lot more bang for a 2-socket box thanks to the launch of the Ivy Bridge EP Xeon E5 2600 V2 processors.
Got all that?
By Intel.
So
the Register was writing that one up, not me.
So that's Ivy Bridge E. So it's still not the current generation of architecture, but we have a 12-core option. So
that's a lot
Ivy
of
Bridge
cores in a
E
server.
is 6-core 12-thread. This is 12-core 25-thread. Do the math, Ryan. 12-core 24-thread in a single socket. I think if I'm going to rebuild my streaming box, I think it's going to be this.
Yeah. Those with pesky applications that like faster clocks to get more work done, well, the process shrink has given the Ivy Bridge Xeons more cache and microarchitecture tweaks as well as moderately faster cores.
I'm going to have to do that.
Yeah. This is going to be a really vicious part.
I got to find a motherboard. All right.
What's the cost going to be like for the 12-core part?
Oh, I don't bother looking up. I mean, sure, it'll be cheap, right?
It'll be a inexpensive and affordable upgrade. The Register, though, Intel cards up Xeon E5 2600 V2 chips for 2-socket boxes. You can find that up on theregister.com. It is a good read if you are a big hardware nerd. Never Settle Forever now with Saints Row 4.
Oh, yeah.
Is this another AMD bundle?
So remember we talked about their Never Settle Forever bundle was cool in that they didn't tell you what games you had to pick.
You could pick your games.
You had to pick the games that you want. Yeah, so they added another game to it after it was released kind of around the E3 time frame. I think it was in July, August. I don't know what month it is. They added another game to it, Saints Row 4, which not appropriate for children.
Speaking of which, Grand Theft Auto 5 releasing on Monday.
Yeah. So, if you're looking at buying a graphics card and you looked at all the bundle games and you're like, I don't really want any of that. Saints Row 4 is out there. It's definitely a very popular game. If you didn't play 3, you should play that as well.
Go get your ultra-violence on.
It's ultra-violent and other stuff.
It's cathartic.
It's ultra-adult. Let's go with that. It's ultra-adult.
Video games have changed, man. Video games have changed. Also changing, HDMI 2.0 announced. Woo! Just in time for the console designs to be complete. But it's interesting, right? Everybody was expecting HDMI 2.0, which was going to be necessary for 60 hertz or higher refresh rate at 4K resolutions. It's pretty interesting because HDMI 2.0 is using the same cables, the same ports, the same hardware effectively, but bringing in 600 megahertz up from 340 megahertz in terms of the frequency, which is 18 gigabytes per second up from 10.2 gigabytes per second. So HDMI 2.0 is a huge performance jump over HDMI 1.4. The extra bits can be used for 32-channel audio at 1536 kilohertz sample rates, as well as the aforementioned 2160 60 frames per second video. Scott Michaud wrote this up at PC Perspective. We were talking about this on HC Nation this week. Some people are speculating as to whether or not you will be able to do firmware updates on some of the existing 4K HDMI 1.4 TVs to support this. I don't think that is going to happen. I have been wrong before, and I will be wrong again. Other people were lamenting, why did HDMI 2.0 come out after the console designs were set in stone? Kids, You need $1,000 part to do 3D at 4K right now. The consoles don't care about the 4K market because between you and me and Robert is like 1/3 of California's 4K market. And you and Robert have already bought your 4K televisions.
What's interesting about this is that it's over single cable.
Yeah.
Right. The Asus PQ321, which is that and the Sharp are like the if you're going to have a 4K monitor, those are the ones to have now. They use 2 cables. I don't, even though this was announced, I have no idea when those are actually going to
eventually
turn into TVs, monitors, and graphics cards that support it.
The compliance test is expected in late 2013, which means we could have HDMI 2.0 parts anytime in the next 12 to 36 months.
The compliance test will happen. The good news is you can use all your existing cables.
Yes. I think that's the best part.
This is it's good news. It's good to have. This will eventually mean that we can have monitors that have a single head, 4K monitors that run at 60 hertz with a single input. You don't have to worry about any of the complications that we saw with the Intel or the Asus monitor with AMD or NVIDIA setups. That'll be good, but it's not going to be like this year. I don't think. Well, we'll see that it'll probably be mid 2014 at least.
It's funny. It's one of the things in there is also sort of an auto lip syncing capability is being architected into HDMI 2.0. And
does that sound like too much? Like I don't really want my cable to have that much control over what my content is doing.
Have you looked inside of a lightning cable?
Well, I'm saying, yeah, I agree with that as well.
Wait, let me see if I get the line
here. I
here.
Want it to be a dummy.
Hold on. Dynamic synchronization of video and audio streams. That would be making sure the lips and the voice match. I like that, though. Dynamic synchronization. Burke?
Is that like SDI?
Do we have dynamic synchronization of video and audio streams? No. Oh, well.
Is it static synchronization of audio and video streams? That sounds... It's manual. Okay. All right.
Whatever you do, don't hit that button on the side of the consoles.
By the way, I did look up prices for those Xeon processors.
Dun, dun, dun.
Starts at $202.
That's for the part that is basically slower than the one you have.
It goes up to 2614.
Hey, 12 cores? What's 2600 divided by 12?
I don't know, like
200 and something.
$200 some per core, plus all that cash you get. It's going to be great.
Oh, my goodness. Steam family sharing is different from Xbox One. You can share Steam games with like 10 of your closest friends or family members. It's good stuff. I mean, what else is there to say? And not on all games. Some games are sort of for technical reasons not allowed to be shared. But essentially, I could be like, Ryan, do you want to play GTA, whatever?
I'm surprised that they went through with this. It was a big deal when Microsoft announced that they were going to do that, but now they're not going to do that anymore, as far as I know, right? Because you don't have to play your games online. So if you don't have to play your games online, then taking advantage of that would be really easy. So I'm surprised that they did it, but I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have, like, my wife doesn't really play games. I don't have any kids that play games, but I have friends that play games, and it says it's not against the rules to sign up your friends.
It's good.
So I'll have to see kind of, what they allow, what they don't want to allow. And
a Steam account may authorize family sharing on up to 10 devices at a given time. Libraries are shared and borrowed in their entirety. So it's not just a single game. You can try all the games.
Okay.
Some Steam games may be unavailable for sharing. For example, titles that require an additional third-party key, account, or subscription in order to play cannot be shared between accounts. Yeah. A shared library may only be accessed by one user at a time. That's kind of a bummer.
So it's saying a shared library. So both of you can't play one game that you happen to own at the same time.
Apparently not.
Okay.
Oh, wait. As the lender, you may always access... Okay, here we go. When I authorize a device to lend my library to others, do I limit my own ability to access and play my games? As the lender, you may always access and play your games at any time. If you decide to start playing when a friend is already playing one of your games, he or she will be given a few minutes to either purchase the game or quit playing. So you bump your friends out.
I decided I wasn't, you're going to have... Sorry, you're done with BioShock Infinite now. Double click. Yeah. At least it's not instant. A couple of minutes.
They give them a warning. And that kind of bums me out.
Like a timer in the corner. Because you have 30 seconds left.
It's not like they couldn't, share the bits. But I guess
I mean, the idea is it's all or nothing. What they want to prevent is obviously me and 9 of my friends playing 10 different games in my Steam library.
What they want is for me to take advantage of your thousands of Steam titles and realize that there's hundreds of them I need to buy myself, and thus vastly increase the number of Steam games being sold at any given moment.
That is correct. The goal is not to prevent unauthorized copying. The point is to increase sales. As with most companies, that is kind of their goal. How dare they?
It just sounds familiar.
How dare they?
We should take a moment to thank our friends over at ProXpn. There is a new, if you have not heard about ProXpn, it's one of the easiest to manage VPNs out there. A VPN, a virtual private network. We're not going to talk about the NSA today. If you want to stay in a hotel and not worried about, say, somebody like Ryan accessing your personal information because you exposed it naked on the hotel internet, you can run ProXpn and protect your bits, protect your information. You can masquerade as if you were located somewhere else. For example, if you had a certain interest in Canadian curling and you were blocked as an American from watching curling videos from Canada.
Oh, man.
I'm pointing at you, Canada. I'm a little ticked about this, but then again, you know, there's a lot of American services aren't available overseas, so I suppose it's fair to block me from watching curling. In any case, ProXpn, great service, and they have a new app for Android in the Google Play Store that supports OpenVPN. OpenVPN being good because it is open source, so everyone can eyeball it and make sure it is secure. So listen, it's a global VPN, a virtual private network, works with almost any internet connection, and it creates for you a secure encrypted tunnel in which to hide all of your online data while it's moving around the internet. This is a good thing. Any online application can work with ProXpn, your web browser, your email, your file sharing, your instant messaging programs, your access to Canadian curling sites. It's a 500.
You're really pinning in on that point.
You know, you think you're a basketball fan, it's because you haven't watched curling. I can guarantee you, I can cure you of this basketball addiction. Yeah.
Because I'll never want to watch TV again. Is that what it is?
I'm telling you, nobody expects curling to be so addictive. It works with your iOS device, your Android device, Windows or Mac. You have advanced controls. You can select the programs and ports you want to anonymously route through ProXpn servers. You know, they've got servers in the U.S., U.K., Asia, and more. Essentially, you're creating a secure internet region-free connection. Steve Gibson gave it a great review on Security Now, which means you should be able to trust it. Cue NSA joke here. And go to proxpn.com/twit for more information and to sign up. Oh, I read that part.
Did we?
Twice.
Did we?
I did.
The new Android app?
I'm going to read it a third time. There is a new Android app in the Google Play Store that supports OpenVPN. If you're an Android user and you want to get your ProXpn on, if you want to secure your mobile communications in Android, and I highly suggest you do. I got some friends that help start Lookout. So,
a lot of people don't think about their phone. They think about their computer. They don't always think about their phone.
Well, you can basically set up a VPN for iOS or Android or Windows or Mac at ProXpn. And do us a favor, if you decide to sign up for ProXpn.com, go to ProXpn.com/twit. The accounts are normally $9.95 a month or $75 for an entire year. We got a special offer for you. Use the Twitch, TWICH code to receive 20% off for the lifetime of your account. It is less than $5 a month on a yearly plan. If you're not satisfied, you can cancel within 7 days for a full refund. Secure your life. If you travel, you should be doing this. If you're in a college dorm, you should be doing this. If you have children in a college dorm and they have your credit card for school, they should be doing this. ProXpn.com/twit and sign up with the code TWITCH. We want to thank ProXpn for their support of This Week in Computer Hardware. I've managed to wind up the entire cable here.
Yeah, I wondered how long it was going to be until you just unplugged it, but you know.
I managed to not unplug myself for a change. Imagine that. Do we have time for one question? Burke, do we have time for a question?
We've got time for a couple questions, absolutely.
Email from James about a MythTV front end. He says, I'm looking to implement a small, low power, and quiet MythTV front end system. I want to completely cut the cord this month. Yes! And last week was my first trial surviving football season using only over-the-air TV and online subscriptions. Just stop watching football. You'll feel so much better. Basketball. Just ask Ryan.
I watch a lot of football, too.
You do?
Yeah, I do.
I had no idea.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
What's your favorite team?
Well, the Bengals.
Really?
I live near Cincinnati. I have season tickets. I have a painted bus and everything.
I learned something new about Ryan
talk about it later.
every other week. This is awesome. Is it painted like a tiger? Do you have a tiger bus?
I have a tiger bus.
I want pictures of the tiger bus.
I will show you pictures of a tiger bus.
Do you guys want to see the pictures of the tiger bus?
I don't. I'll look later. We'll see.
Goodness.
We'll see.
back to James with his MythTV front end Tiger Bus.
I have a Tiger Bus.
That is so awesome. The HD broadcast was a surprising success. The over-the-air football broadcast, and I feel was better quality than my cable feed. It probably was. Over-the-air HD broadcasts are fantastic. He's built a MythTV backend, which is working great, so now I'd like to distribute that to a couple of TVs. The plan is to use the system as a MythTV front end, but also as a web browser to full screen some online feeds. What would be the most efficient processor to build this system around? I'm not opposed to net-tops or similar all-in-one systems. A big thanks to Patrick, Ryan, and the production team for a great show every week. I want to give a shout-out to Burke, by the way, the long-suffering producer who's just not going to put a picture of himself up. There it is.
We put him through a lot.
Yeah,
we really
Burke
do.
and Tony, we love you because you work way too hard to make us look good. This would be a good application for something like an Intel NUC or Gigabyte's new bricks, although the Gigabyte bricks are probably not as efficient as some of the... Man, I wonder how long it's going to be before there's one of the new Z3000 Atom-based
See, that was my
desktops.
thought when I read this. He said the email before that release, but, when Atom was being released, the previous generations,
Right.
you could eventually find like a mini ITX version of an Atom motherboard. And if you could find a mini ITX version of Bay Trail,
That would be awesome.
that would be perfect for it. I honestly have zero idea if that's going to happen, though. I haven't heard anything from Intel about it, or any of their traditional kind of like board partners like Gigabyte and Asus and MSI.
It's funny, like the most efficient processor right now to build this around would be like one of the low-end Haswell processors.
Yeah.
Or, any sort of notebook. Yeah, I would almost say if you have a spare notebook that you can temporarily assign to this project, do that and wait to see what happens with Bay Trail and if anybody does an ITX board or a NUC-style box around it. Because it's really frustrating. This is like one of those junctures where like we have the perfect part for you, right? As somebody who has a Core i7 920 in a closet that's like the media server and the gaming machine, and one of kind of my desktop machine, and the machine I used to rip Blu-rays. It's great, but like it idles at 100 watts. So that closet is like I'll open the door and the heat will hit me like I'm in. Some part of the country that gets hot in the summer. Actually, the East Bay gets hot. I'm thinking of San Francisco. But it like literally, it'll be like 95, 100 degrees in that room. And it's just a tremendous waste of energy. You don't need a lot of power to run what you're doing. You don't need a lot of graphics to run what you're doing.
You could really get, I know there are low-power AMD mini ITX platforms as well, right? And you don't need much performance on this, and it's not something that's going to be running a lot. You don't have to worry about battery life. So it would be another option as well. I'm trying to think, like any of the AMD A4 series of processors would work, and you can get those in mini ITX designs.
I don't think there's any ITX Tahama boards at this point.
Try Tamash or Kabini.
Tamash is what I was thinking of.
There you go. There could be some of that. And it'll be relatively inexpensive, too.
Here we go.
You find one?
Possibly.
Like a mini ITX board runs quad-core.
Forget it.
AMD
It's right. You forget it. It's ruggedized. That means it's going to be like sold to military units for $1 billion.
Yeah. I think there are a lot of options you can do with that. Don't try to. I mean, unless you have like extra desktop products sitting around.
Right.
That's obviously way overkill. Way overkill.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing is just get what's inexpensive. Get if you want to get something now, get like a Core i3 NUC or look for one of these $350 laptops we've been talking about.
Yeah, a NUC is going to be it's on the expensive side, but it would be an ideal.
Well, like $250, but you'll still need
you have to buy memory and SSD storage for it. So, yeah, not the cheapest, but good performance, and you'd be able to use it for a lot of other things if you wanted to.
I'm also a big fan of recycling laptops for if it's got an HDMI out, a laptop can be incredibly useful that way too.
Just the power settings so that it's always on when the screen is closed.
And you're looking at like 1 amp of power, so it's not consuming that much power.
Yeah, it could be good.
And if the power goes out, well, actually your projector HDTV is going to go out. Damn. So close.
It was a good idea.
Adam's got a question about ripping Blu-rays and storage. He says, I was inspired after listening to the last episode and hearing about Patrick talk about ripping his Blu-ray collection. I've been thinking about doing this for quite some time as well. I also have about 300 or more Blu-ray discs that I'm interested in ripping onto a hard drive. I'm under the impression that a full 1080p rip will tape up 25 to 30 gigabytes of data. I would like the best quality as possible. So I'll be buying at least one 4 terabyte hard disk drive to start with, and probably at least a couple more 4 terabyte disk drives in the future. My question is, what program should I be using to rip the Blu-rays? Any particular BluRay drive I should pick up? Should I just look into building a NAS system? My PC should handle the encoding fairly well, and I have a ton of space for several more hard drives. Any advice would be appreciated. Thanks. It's kind of funny. We were talking about this on HD Nation this week.
Okay.
So both Robert and I own AnyDVD, which is an application that relieves you from the restraints of the digital copyright protection that is applied to Blu-ray discs. It is not an inexpensive application, but it will make your life a lot simpler.
How much is it? Like we're talking like $50?
I think it's like $50 a year now.
Okay.
AnyDVD HD.
Okay. When you said
I bought like
I was thinking 500.
I have like the lifetime version of it now. So hold on.
I'm still surprised that application is alive and kicking.
AnyDVD HD.
Yeah.
It's alive and kicking because copy protection is vicious and cruel and gets changed.
I know why. I mean legally, for the amount of lawyers that are out there, that they would try some way to stop it down.
Overseas.
Oh. Good job, foreigners.
Well, you know, video LAN client, right? I mean,
French.
If I could just.
That's still overseas. Irish.
It's all fun and games until the Irish gets involved, and then
so
it's
any
fun.
PC HD, and then he's asking like
any DVD HD.
Any DVD. I'm sorry.
Well, it's kind of funny. Like people use basically like Make MKV. You know, don't you hate it when you can see the logo for a piece of software in your head, but you can't remember the name of it?
It's hard to search for that.
It is really hard to search for that. Video encoding.
Any particular drives? BluRay drives would you recommend? Are there ones that rip faster? Because that's going to be a long part of that process.
Well, it was funny. I started. I'm like upgrading the Rip Monster and adding BluRay drives into it, and it's been a long time since I've shopped for a BluRay drive. And what made me laugh my ass off is my 1X BluRay drive I can now replace with like a 47X BluRay drive. So I'm thinking there's a possibility that I can vastly increase my rip speed just by spending $50 on a drive. So I'll have more information on that on a couple of weeks. The
storage space I will recommend now. One hard drive is great. I would rate it.
Yeah.
If you're talking about storing all of your data and this important data that you're going to spend a lot of time ripping. The good news is if you lose all of your movies, you still have the Blu-rays that you can redo the process. If you have to.
What's interesting, right, is don't rip your Blu-rays and then sell your Blu-rays. One, that's illegal.
Yeah, don't do that.
It's even more illegal than ripping them. And two, it's slimy. And three, it's just wrong. FreeNAS actually finally has plugins to do DLNA servers and some of the other stuff. So FreeNAS is essentially a dedicated version of BSD. It's a cousin to Linux. And what's really cool about what they're doing is with ZFS, it essentially adds in some superior, kind of like RAID 5 on steroids type parity protection. I'm going to get a whole bunch of emails to Twitch at twit.tv because I just did the worst job of under-explaining that as possible. But essentially, you can turn an inexpensive PC into a really badass server that will both protect your data and serve it throughout the house. So that's a really, really cool thing. And all the other reason, by the way, to keep the disks is because you probably can't afford 12 terabytes of offsite storage online. Or if you can, it may take 9 months to upload 12 terabytes or a year and a half to upload those 12 terabytes. So if you still have the discs, you can re-rip them should there be a terrible, terrible accident.
Yep.
But let me figure out the other name I was looking for. DVDFab Decryptor is the one I was looking for.
Okay, I remember that one too.
It's been in beta for about 1,000 years, but it's good stuff. Essentially there's kind of a running battle between the Blu-ray consortium and people that want to access Blu-rays on, and to create their own copies. And I do it because it's really convenient. Robert Heron basically rips ISOs. To talk to your storage issues, if you've got a 50 gigabyte Blu-ray and the entire 50 gigabyte Blu-ray is occupied by the movie and the special features and the additional soundtracks, then what happens is you end up with a 50 gigabyte ISO file or a 35 gigabyte ISO file. If you just want the movies and you're not worried about the extra soundtracks or being able to hear it in Spanish or Japanese or with the director doing the overdub, then you can just rip the movie and the soundtrack of your choice, and that will create a significantly smaller file. If you don't want lossless audio going with MPEG-4, you can do a significantly smaller file again that will also be playable on most of your DLNA compatible devices. That is awesome.
We're not showing that yet.
I saw the bus people.
I was
it
wondering,
exists.
25 to 30 gigs. You take all that out,
Right.
Do you compress yours if you are ripping them in any fashion, or do you leave them as...
At the moment, I'm playing around just with leaving them as ISOs because I love a lot of the special features. I'm at the moment, all of my Blu-rays are in a crate, in a closet. Right. And I would like to make them... Robert Heron's...
accessible.
Yeah, Robert Heron does a Windows Media Player based system, and he's got, literally, he's got, the pictures. He can scroll down and the pictures of the cover of every Blu-ray he has goes by, and he clicks on it and it loads just like a Blu-ray, except they're all living on his server. So he never has to get off the couch and walk to the Blu-ray player, which is awesome if you're incredibly lazy like I am. or if you've ever been trapped under a sleeping child that you don't want to wake up. The closest commercial thing to that is Kaleidescape, which is this incredibly high-end manufacturer of video streaming equipment, like $10,000, and they will give you like a DVD, basically the ability to rip all of their DVDs on your DVDs onto a server and distribute them around your home. They went to do it with Blu-ray, and basically the Blu-ray people would let them do that, but it's like you can stream it throughout the home. You could rip it, but you can only play it back if the Blu-ray is in the machine. So then they started doing like gigantic Blu-ray carousels. And as much as I want to pay $12,000 to get the incredibly expensive rich guy dispensation to the DMCA, we're just going to take the risk and create our own, setups at home. And Windows Media Player works well for it. There's a whole lot of options. We talked about it a bunch on HD Nation, but
I need to look into that stuff too. I'll watch from you.
Somebody says it's not 47x for Blu-ray content. You're breaking my heart. Who is that in the chat room?
It was Alan, I think.
Alan.
You did say DVD when you said it anyway, so you said it correctly. Yeah.
Did I say no? Let me see if I can find that Blu-ray. I swear, man, it was awesome.
I'm sure it's an improvement over one, whatever it is.
I would hope,
whatever.
Because it's the first generation combination Blu-ray and HD DVD drive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Remember HD DVD?
Oh no, I've got several of those still in use. I have a couple of those with IDE cables coming out the back of them. Think about that.
So it's 12x BD-ROM, 16x DVD-ROM, 48x. Where is it? Where is it, man?
No, I think that's going to be right.
Malventano, you've breaking my heart.
12 is better than 1. It's about 12 times.
I think it may actually be 1x. Is it 1x
peak.
reading? Obviously, I have additional research to do here. I apologize for not having bought this already, but the children and the school and the diapers, they add up after a while. Oh, my goodness.
That's complex.
We have to get you to the airport.
Oh, I need to get there eventually, yeah.
Let's do that. Do you want to catch your plane? Or do you want to call your wife at, 1 in the morning in Kentucky?
No, I'm definitely not doing that. Let's
Honey,
go to the
I'm not
airport.
going to be there in the morning.
If you guys want to send us emails, twitch@twit.tv, twitch@twit.tv is the address you should use. If you want to find us on the website, on the internet, it's twit.tv/Twitch. And if you want to watch us record the show live, we do it Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, and thereabouts.
I just want to shout out to Thordrun in the chat room. Not lazy, cheap.
That's an important difference.
Well, first you buy one drive,
Efficient.
then you buy 10 drives, and suddenly your children are not wearing shoes. It's a scary thought. Anyhow, ladies and gentlemen, PCPer.com is the place to find Ryan Trout. It is day gig. You can find me at Techzilla and HD Nation. And that is it for this edition of Twitch. I'm Patrick Norton.
I'm Ryan Trout.
We'll see you next week on Twitch.